because Iran has now been blaming President Trump for diplomacy collapse, saying that the deal was within reach and the nuclear deal was almost done. And now Iran is accusing President Trump of derailing the talks. Let's connect with Rishabh as well. Rishabh, good morning. This has happened while the Geneva talks were also taking place. President Trump in his earlier address had said that on no account that they would allow Iran to actually have a nuclear weapon. Shinjoy, if you can take this question. And Iran is now of the opinion, like while talks were happening, negotiations were happening, and they were happening on a positive note. It was on that very same day that earlier Donald Trump had stated that he was not very happy in the way that the talks were progressing.
Yes, Donald Trump wanted something else. Donald Trump wanted Iran to give up its entire civilian nuclear program. Now, that is not something the Iranians were completely in agreement with. And as a result of that, the Americans felt, or the American government felt, would lead to weaponization. There would be a gradual segue from the civilian nuclear movement, and gradually the Iranians would build a nuclear weapon. Now, that is what was the fear. Because you heard President Trump speak, he felt that two things were going to happen. The Iranians would give themselves a long-range ballistic missile, which is an ICBM. Anything with a range of more than 8,000 kilometers to 10,000 kilometers becomes an ICBM. So if Iran has an ICBM which can target America, particularly cities on the East Coast, like New York or Washington, D.C., or places in Florida, then very clearly the American heartland, the American homeland, will be at risk. And he said this may not happen now, but our children and their children would fear this. And that was one reason for hitting back. The other, as I was mentioning, was the U.S. fears about an Iranian nuclear weapon. Now, at this point, the Americans feel that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon, but it is entirely possible that if this process continued, and Iran would eventually get a nuclear weapon. Now, let's not forget that some months ago, America used bunker-busting bombs to try and destroy nuclear facilities in Iran. And they may have succeeded to a large extent. But in these months, the Americans believe, Trump himself has said this, that America feared Iran was building up its nuclear capability again.
Yes. Well, that seems to be, as far as when it comes to the trajectory itself is concerned, which Iran believes that were moving in a positive direction. But remember, the attack comes in even less than 48 hours, where Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi very much was present there in Israel. Now, after United States and Israel launched these joint strikes on Iran, killing the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and several other senior officials as well, Tehran has also been quick to respond. Iran has said that in its retaliation, it targeted several Israel and US-linked military sites across the region, including in the Gulf states that host the US forces. And central to Iran's response in its missile arsenal and other platforms, tools at its disposal to inflict pain on the US and others. Well, that seems to be, as far as when it comes to the hoisting of the red flag now is concerned in Iran, that can be seen as a way to avenge the death of Khamenei. Now, in the meantime, let's get you this another round of breaking update. What we are learning that in an interview with New York Times, President Trump has now cited the Venezuela example. Trump says that what we did in Venezuela, I think this is a perfect scenario. And when pressed on his plans on a transition of power, President Trump says that he hoped Iran's military forces would simply turn over their weapons to the people. Now, President Trump says that the U.S. military intends to sustain its assault on Iran for 4 to 5 weeks if necessary, insisting that it won't be difficult for Israel and the United States to maintain the intensity of the battle, even as he is warned of the possibility of more American casualties. Well, that he said that in his initial address as well. Let's get connected with Rishabh on this. Rishabh, President Trump making these kind of statements, what do you believe as far as when it comes to, a power transition, a new government, or whether the existing Iranian power structure would run, that the government would be overthrown? That seems highly unlikely because Iran is not Venezuela.
Well, see, Iran is not Venezuela, Iran is not Iraq, Iran is not Libya, where you take the despot from the top and the government crumbles. Iran is a country which believes in theocracy, and for this very hour, Amita, we have been discussing this, that for this very hour, Iran have had succession plans in place for decades now. Yes, Khamenei has been killed in the strikes by US and Israel, but the succession plan is already in place. The interim supreme leader has been elected, and now the group of clerics, the 80 clerics who sit at the Supreme Council, will nominate the new and elect the new supreme leader as well. And it's not that the system is just run by one person in Iran. So yes, Khamenei has been removed, Khamenei has been taken out, but the people, be it the president, be it the chief justice, be it the jurists from the Supreme Council of Clerics, all of them are still there, and the system is still running. Even when it comes to military, be it IRGC or Iranian military, they have generals who can function without a center command telling them what exactly to do. They have been trained that way. So Iran is not going to be as easy as Venezuela. Venezuela was very easy. You went in, held Maduro and his wife, came back, and now Maduro is in New York. The number 2 has taken over and is friendly with US. In Libya, what you did, you went after Gaddafi. Gaddafi was killed. Since then, the way transitions have happened, Libya is still unstable. Iraq, we have seen the similar story unfolding. Yes, Saddam was taken out, but what followed
so let me
was something
bring in Angie's assessment on this, because Angie, it's difficult to pull off what happened in Venezuela in Iraq. Now, as far as when it comes to the quick succession is also concerned, that has already been announced. Now, even after the eliminations of several of the commanders and their second-in-command within Iran, they seem to be ready with a backup plan.
That's right. Well, in Venezuela, the vice president was very, very quick to understand the situation. She saw what was going on. Rodriguez said, okay, I do not want to be the next target, and decided to play very well with President Trump. And she also told the Pentagon where all of the former president's men were hiding. So the operation was much, much smaller in scale than what we're seeing here in Iran, because once you take out the supreme leader, there are 100 more people behind him in the secession pool to take over the place. So this is why President Trump came on the podium and said, we want the guards to lay their arms. We want you to surrender, and we will leave you alone. Because he also sees that this problem doesn't go away with just killing one figurehead. There's going to be another and another and another. And I think that's where, these are two very separate operations. Venezuela, it was quick, swift. And as your reporter just said, he is sitting in a Brooklyn prison right now. Whereas here in Iran, it's going to be several weeks, if not months, before any new leader can actually emerge that I believe that the Trump administration wants there. And I think that's where it's going to get very dangerous, because although there's new leaders, well, we need someone who is going to be compatible to the Trump administration. That's going to be very sticky.
Well, that is because we have seen the kind of results that have now hit the streets when it comes to the people there and supporters of Khamenei, because Iran then thereafter carried out these retaliatory strikes on Israel. We're looking at Iran continuing to strike U.S. assets across the Gulf, including several military bases with explosions. And that is now coming in with what they called as the Brotherhood. When it comes to Qatar, when it comes to Bahrain, Jordan, Oman, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. We're going to continue with the coverage. Angie requests you to stay on with us. So will Trinjoy and Risha. We're just going to head into a very short break. The extensive coverage continues right here on Times Now.